Hey there everyone and welcome back. So today we have got a bit of a Pillion review on the Kawasaki ZX-9R. Now we did earlier today actually go out and shoot this video on the bikes, but silly old me forgot to put the hold switch on my audio recorder and it stopped recording after 6 seconds. So what we're going to do, we're going to talk about the experience that me and the wifey have had whilst we've been riding together on the ZX-9R. And in between, we're going to cut in the clips of us basically riding together, I suppose.
Yep.
So, I mean, let's try and remember what questions we asked each other. I mean, I think the very first question I asked you was, how has the Pillion experience been for you? Because, I mean, we've been riding, well, you've ridden on it a couple of times this week, haven't you?
Yes.
So, what's it been like for you?
It's been really comfortable. I've really enjoyed it, actually. I think it's good because it's got the handles at the side, the Pillion handle at the side, and obviously when I first got the
ZZR.
No, not your ZZR, sorry, the first Kawasaki you had, the R6.
Oh, the R6,
That's what I had there, but obviously I had the top box on the back to lean into, so it was a more familiar hand grip position for me. So that was pleasant. I didn't expect that. I wasn't really sure what to expect, Pillion handle-wise. I think because obviously with your ZH2 there isn't any, is there?
Nope.
So that's always been a bit of like I don't like going on it because of that reason.
Well, that's the thing for me. I mean, whilst we were out, I think the realisation that we came to was just the fact that this is a sport bike that we're riding, and it's more comfortable and more ergonomic for Pillion riders than the ZH2, which is a more comfortable motorcycle, but it doesn't have any Pillion handles. It's got a teeny tiny postage stamp of a seat for the Pillion, and there's really no options for Pillion riders whatsoever on the ZH2, which is the biggest thing that surprised me the most, how a sport bike that is traditionally uncomfortable, and if it's uncomfortable for the rider, then it's probably going to be more uncomfortable for the Pillion, the fact that it actually is usable as a touring motorcycle for the rider and the Pillion. So, I mean, In terms of ergonomics, then, how do you feel like you were sitting on the bike?
I think I was sitting actually pretty like straight up,
quite upright.
For the majority of it. The only thing I think was when you would obviously accelerate off from a standing position, I would lean forward and hold on to you just because it does throw you back a bit, and there's no top box for me to fall into. I'd rather just hold on to you, and then when the speed plateaus, I just hold on to you and then with one hand and then the Pillion handle with the rest. But, I mean, I sit with my head slightly above yours, so we haven't hit heads. No,
that's that's another shocking thing, because on every motorcycle we've ever ridden together, we've always banged our heads together, haven't we? Always.
Helmets have always hit each other.
So it's quite a lot of room for the Pillion on the back of that bike, which is, again, quite a surprise. And I think that's the general theme of this entire video, is how surprising that a sport bike, a thoroughbred sport bike from the 90s, is just for touring. It's an incredible... It kind of doesn't seem to make any sense. It's a bit of an oxymoron, where, you know, a sport bike and comfort don't kind of go hand in hand.
That's what you expect when you think of a sport bike, is it?
Now, I think I'm going to say, caveat this a little bit, that it isn't the most comfortable motorcycle in the world, but the point that we're trying to make is that it's not as uncomfortable as a traditional sport bike might be. Now, I asked you whilst we were out on the ride earlier today about your kind of how you remember the CBR 600RR that we used to have, because, again, that's a sport bike through and through, very aggressive ergonomics, and not exactly designed for Pillion riding like most sport bikes are, and you only ever went on that motorcycle once.
Says a lot there, doesn't it?
So, and you didn't like it.
I didn't like it, no.
So from your memory, then, what was it that you didn't like about the 600RR compared to the ZX-9R? Because they're both red.
They're different reds. No, I think for one, the no handle thing on the CBR was obviously, even though I might not use them very much, knowing that they're there to be used is something, you know. And I had to hold on to you quite tightly when we would go anywhere, and it wasn't comfortable. The seat wasn't comfortable.
Well, I suppose, yeah, because the pillion handles, as you hold onto them, they kind of force you to sit a bit more upright. Whereas on the CBR 600RR, because you didn't have that option, you had to hold on to me.
Yeah.
All your body weight was leaning forward, probably contributing to the lack of comfort on that bike.
Yeah, 100%.
But honestly, that is basically the same story across the board with sport bikes.
Yeah.
They have no options available for pillion riders whatsoever.
I think on the Honda as well, my legs were up higher.
Yes, they would have been.
Whereas on here, it's fairly comfortable. The only, and again, I'll just caveat that with, after about an hour, we went for a ride for about an hour, didn't we? Then we stopped and I got off, and then I realised my legs hurt.
Yeah.
At that point, my knees were hurting.
So yeah, it's not the most comfortable motorcycle in the world.
No.
But that's not all we're trying to say.
But
your knees aren't exactly up underneath my armpits, are they?
But the thing is, I didn't realise my knees were hurting while I was on the bike. It's like when you sit down in a car for a really long time and you get up and your knees ache.
Yeah.
It's more like that.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
It wasn't pain, it was just an ache. But yeah, I like you say, my knees aren't up really, really high. So it is a more
they're kind of
ride.
in a. I mean, did it feel similar to the ZZR in a way, where your knee placement was?
I think my knees are slightly higher on the
ZX-9.
ZX-9, but not in like a really noticeable way. Only because I can compare the two. Do you know what I mean? What are you doing?
Dog wants some attention
from everyone.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, from a rider's perspective, having a pillion on the back of it, I mean, you know me, I've got quite a lot of gripes about taking a pillion. I'm not that much of a fan. I much prefer us riding separate motorcycles when we're riding together rather than riding pillion.
Yeah.
But it's not overly, and it's not an even more negative experience, if you know what I mean, compared to the other bikes that we've
100%.
tested the pillion riding on. I mean, I do kind of wish that we did like a pillion video of the CBR 600RR when we had it, but it really wasn't a positive experience for you, which is surprising. I mean, I think the issue with those bikes is they redline really high. So they sound like they're going a lot faster than they actually are, whereas me and you riding together on all the other bikes we've got, the ZH2, the ZZR, the ZX-9R, we've been going a lot faster on those motorcycles and getting up to that speed much quicker than we ever did on that CBR 600RR. So I think that's another thing to kind of keep in mind here when it comes to using sport bikes as touring machines, in effect.
Yeah.
The fact that the pillion might not necessarily be as comfortable simply because the sound is going to be more obnoxious, the sound is going to be more intimidating.
I'll be honest, and this is just a general statement. I've never got in the back of a bike with you and felt unsafe from your riding.
Yeah.
But I didn't feel 100% safe on the Honda. I don't know what it was, and it wasn't you, but there was just something about it that I just...
Yeah, it's interesting.
That
is interesting because it's not a scary motorcycle to ride in the slightest. It's a very slow motorcycle compared to the others.
Yeah.
So
but as a pillion, it just was not.
That's interesting. I mean, I don't know. I imagine that if after a period of time going on a motorcycle like that, you'd get used to it and it wouldn't be so bad. But it's a bit of a shock compared to other motorcycles that don't redline anywhere near as high, and they don't sound like they're about to explode from underneath you.
If you think I went from the ER6 to the ZZR and then to the CBR, I was spoilt pillion-wise leading up to that. So
Exactly.
I knew what I liked and what was appropriate for a pillion.
Yeah. I mean, the reason why we're bringing up the CBR 600RR is because that is a traditional sport bike. That's what you'd expect a sport bike to be, and the pillion experience on that motorcycle
it's vastly different to that.
Is totally different to the ZX-9R, which shocker.
Yeah,
absolute. If I touched up, I pushed a button down. I don't know if that's made any difference or not, but it's just it's a total surprise to me how versatile that ZX-9R actually is.
Because I mean, we've been out a couple of times this week because I've had errands to run, and it's been easier than me getting my bike out or getting in the car, having to stop, find place to park and all that sort of stuff. And each time I'm like, do you mind taking me out on the ZX-9R? And I've been very specific about the
Yeah,
bike.
to be fair though, I mean that's because I've been wanting to ride it anyway because
I know,
I'm obsessed
but
with
at
that
no
bike at the
point
moment. I'm
was
still
I
going through that
like-
honeymoon period.
But at no point was I like, oh, can you take me out on the Honda? I never asked you.
Yeah.
Whereas that is a very different experience, and
Yeah.
and it's not just because it's a Kawasaki. If anyone comes to me in the comments, but it is just different. It's more comfortable. I was able to sit much further back on the seat and have a bit of room between us because I felt more confident in the position, in being able to hold on to the handles and hold on to you or what have you. I didn't feel like I had to be like, so close. I mean, the question I asked you was, how do you find the seating position for the Pillion on that new bike?
Pretty good for me because the seats are separate and because they're elevated. Whenever under braking, Pillions always slide forward under braking. That's kind of just how it goes, and it's really uncomfortable a lot of the time because a lot of the time it's lower down, so you're feeling the pressure a lot basically in the smaller your back, whereas on that bike you're feeling the pressure a little bit higher up, so more of it is on your arms, so it feels it's a little bit of a nicer experience for me compared to other motorcycles in that respect.
Yeah.
But yeah, just the fact that we're not hitting our helmets together, that's a big plus for me. I mean, to be fair, it could literally be just because of the way how you're sitting on the other bikes. So it might be worth at some point taking out one of the other bikes and seeing if there's a different way you could sit on the Pillion seat so that wouldn't happen. But
with the ZZR, the handle's right behind you.
Yeah.
And I don't know how comfortable I am with both my hands right behind me.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean. You wouldn't. You'd have one hand in front and one hand behind, but still, what I'm saying is, whether or not you could sit a little bit further upright
Possibly.
to stop the helmets from bashing together. Because that happens so often. That's one of the most annoying things about Pillion riding is when the helmets hit together, and we didn't have that once today.
No, it was really nice.
It was really, really nice and unexpected for me. I mean, of course, when I was putting the power down and I was warning you about it beforehand, you'd hold on to me with both your hands and what have you, as you would. But even then, because your head was so much more elevated than mine, there still wasn't any helmet contact, which again, absolutely shocked me. It absolutely surprised me.
I think there was one point where our helmets nearly hit, but I put my head this way and they didn't. But that, I think, was when we went over that really potholey bit.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We went through towards the end of our ride together. We went on through some massive potholes,
but the entire side of our road was just lots of potholes.
Because we rode in around Cheltenham, and some of the roads around Cheltenham are really nice.
Some of them are great.
You just got extremes one to the other. Some of the roads are absolutely awful. And Pillion riding at the best of times, puts pressure on the suspension. So when you're going over that kind of rough road, it's never a nice feeling when you're doing it on your own, let alone when you've got weight on the suspension. It feels even worse.
Yeah, that was so fun. But
yeah, apart from that though, the whole thing was a really positive experience for me. Sounds like it's a positive experience for you as well. So it just goes to show that just because a motorcycle is a sport bike doesn't necessarily mean that you can't use it for touring medium-ish distances. I mean, for me, I don't know about you, but for me, I could ride for about an hour and a half on that bike before I'd have to jump off and have a little bit of a stretch for a few minutes before jumping on and going again. But so it's not like a fully fledged touring experience like you would get on a Goldwing or something like that. Those bikes are designed for touring. They are designed to have
longer
Pillions.
rides.
They are designed for longer rides, so they are going to be more comfortable. But just the fact that you can even use that bike for any length of time with some level of comfort, for me, is just incredible. Incredible. It really does speak volumes to the way how Kawasaki design their motorcycles, at least older motorcycles anyway, that they're a bit more considerate when it came to the versatility of a motorcycle. So you had loads of power, you could ride it really quickly, you could ride it hard into the corners and things like that, but then if you did want to take someone on the back of it, you actually could, and you wouldn't need to worry so much. Whereas on the ZX2, and a lot of other sport bikes that you see out there. I mean, ZX2s are naked, but that's not the case.
No.
That's not the case at all. I would not use the ZH2 or the CBR 600RR for that matter as touring bikes in any way, shape or form. I wouldn't take you on the back of one of those bikes because it's just
not a pleasant phrase, is it?
It's not. I mean, and that's the thing. The thing that surprised me the most about the comparison between the ZH2 and the ZX9 is just the fact that the ZH2 is a more comfortable motorcycle, ergonomically wise, and you could easily sit on that bike for a long time riding it. You the rider. But as soon as you add a Pillion to the mix, it all changes. It's not comfortable at all, and it's not an inspiring experience. You know, it's not that enjoyable. Whereas, you know, on a sport bike that you'd expect to have that same experience on, you don't. You actually have a much better experience. And so it's just confusing. It's totally confusing. But I don't know. It's a 24-year-old motorcycle. You know, it can still hang with the big boys in the corners. It's still stupidly quick. So you can't deny that it's not a sport bike. But at the same time, the fact that you could use it for some level of touring. I mean, to be fair, that there are people out there that use sport bikes all the time for touring with their wives, their partners, their girlfriends, whatever. You know, they'll go travel around Scotland or something like that on their sport bikes, which for me is incredible. I don't know if I'd do that on any of the sport bikes that I've owned in the past. No. Travel that far with a Pillion, that sounds like a nightmare to me. But people do it. Yes. So any sport bike, you could argue, you can, as long as it's got a Pillion seat, and Pillion foot pegs, you can tour on it. You can take a Pillion and you can ride into the sunset.
That's not true.
But that's not the point. Yeah, the point, you can do it, but you don't necessarily want to be doing it with loads of discomfort, having to stretch your knees every 5 minutes, you know, having to stop off at services every other one because your back hurts or something like that. And so it's a bit of a breath of fresh air to experience a sport bike where that is not the case.
Yeah.
And it's a 24-year-old sport bike at that. I'm curious whether or not Kawasaki have got a similar kind of design ethic when it comes to their modern sport bikes, so the ZX-10R. I bet you they don't. I bet you they are basically track bikes on the street. Whereas that motorcycle there can be used on the track, but it's actually more of a street bike, the ZX-9R. So, yeah, just really, really positive experience. I've not had any negative experiences with that motorcycle so far. I've been riding it every single day this week. You've come on it with me a couple of times, and I just can't get over the fact that it's a 24-year-old motorcycle and it runs and rides as good as it does. Yeah. What a motorcycle. What a motorcycle. I mean, we're still getting to know it, and at some point I'll be doing a review of it as well, because that's what YouTubers do. They do reviews on things, don't they? So we'll be taking a bit more of an in-depth look at how the motorcycle feels to ride and things like that. But
yeah,
just from a touring perspective, just from a Pillion riding perspective, it's not a negative experience.
I'll be honest, I would like to do a longer ride on it.
Well, I mean, we were out for a couple of hours today.
I know, but we kept stopping. I want to try and go for like an hour and a half at a time and see, actually, do I get uncomfortable the same time as you, before you? Am I right when you need to stop? Just to see, really, although we say we could use it as a tourer, could we actually with two of us? Like, it's an interesting thought.
We are a little bit sport for choice, though, because we have, 4 motorcycles now we can basically choose from to go on longer rides. Mm-hmm. Most people don't have that option.
No,
they will have one motorcycle in their garage and they will use it for absolutely everything.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yes, I think it would be a good experiment to do, but at the same time, I kind of already know what the result's going to be. It's going to be doable.
Yeah.
It just really depends on how many brakes you have, and That's it. It is doable because it's doable on bikes that are far less comfortable than that.
But I'm not saying, can we tour on it? That's not the question. The question is, does the Pillion get as uncomfortable as the rider does at the same time?
Yeah, I think so as well.
Do you think?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll be very similar. The biggest difference for the rider is that their wrists and their hands might fatigue a little bit more on their shoulders because of the weight, under braking anyway, the weight of the Pillion on their backs. So the rider might fatigue a little bit more in other areas to the Pillion, but it's like everything, isn't it? When you're sitting in the same spot for a lengthy period of time, it's never comfortable. It's, so I think it's going to be the same story, really, to be honest with you. But in terms of actual riding with a Pillion, I think it is more comfortable on that motorcycle than other motorcycles in its class and modern motorcycles in the same class as well. So the ZX-10s, the Fireblades, the R1s, things like that, the Gixxer 1000s. I think that motorcycle, the ZX-9R, is more comfortable in those scenarios, and you'd be able to tour with a Pillion for longer.
I think that bike's been full of surprises since the minute we found it, because we didn't expect to be looking at a Kawasaki. When we got there, you had a good feeling about it anyway, but when we got there, and it obviously wouldn't start to begin with, that was like, okay, fine.
Yeah, but I knew what that was, though.
I know, but
I knew what that was straight away.
Let's shush. And then every single turn that we've looked at it, it's, the condition that it's in was a big surprise. How well it runs was a big surprise. The comfort of it was a big surprise. The fact that you said those fans were still on after you turned the engine off today was a big surprise.
Yeah, it's quite a modern feature. The fact that the fans will still turn over despite the fact that you've taken the key out of the ignition. It's just to cool the engine down.
But every single thing that we've gone, let's try this, we've gone,
it's doable.
Oh wow!
And it exceeds in expectations.
Yeah.
That's the thing about that ZX-9 is it's an old motorcycle, but just the fact that, because my expectations were quite low of it. Low in every regard. It was quite a low expectation motorcycle, and it's exceeded those expectations massively over the last week.
So I have a question for you.
Okay.
Now the purpose of buying this bike was that so we could do certain things with it.
No, I know where this is going.
Yeah, you know where I'm going with this. To do certain things with it that maybe we definitely wouldn't want to do on any of the other bikes that we have. The amount that you fall in love with this bike, do you think you're still going to be using it for the same purpose?
Yes and no. For some of the more riskier experiments that I had in mind, no, I'm not going to. But there are still a few things that we can do on that motorcycle that aren't going to be catastrophic if it goes wrong.
Here's the second question for you. Do you think you're ever going to sell it?
Yes.
Okay. I'll believe that when I see it, but okay.
I've already said to the viewers in a previous video that we'll probably keep it for 6 months to a year, something like that. Basically, do what we want to do with it and move on. It's a motorcycle for the channel, but it doesn't have to be the same bike.
No, I appreciate that, but I know that when we got the CBR, it was very much like you fell in love with it so deeply that you didn't treat it the way you thought you were going to treat it. You treat it a lot better.
Yeah,
so you can understand where I'm a bit hesitant in the fact I don't think you're going to sell it in 6 months to a year.
No, I thought I was going to abuse the CBR 600RR as I thought I was going to abuse this bike, but actually they're too good to abuse. That's the problem. They have a lot of life left in them.
Yeah.
And okay, they're old motorcycles, but when you can have as much fun as we've had over the last week on a 24-year-old motorcycle, you know it's got plenty of life left in it. Hasn't skipped a beat. It's on the nose, on the dot, runs perfectly every time, starts up immediately. And when you got a motorcycle like that, that's a real trooper. You just can't not love it. And I absolutely have fallen in love with that bike. But I do with a lot of motorcycles, but with older bikes, there's just something a little bit more charming about riding an older motorcycle that wants to keep on going, that wants to still give you those really good experiences, and you form a real bond and a real relationship with an older motorcycle than you would with a newer one, just simply because you keep thinking every day, oh, you're on your last legs, and it's not.
That brings me to my next question. Taking my bike out of the equation, because it's not even in the same league as the bikes that you own. Order your bikes in your favourite, first to least favourite.
I mean, I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to put me on the spot. I get that. Logically speaking, my favourites would be ZH2 first, ZZR, ZX-9, Ninja 125.
And my bike's not included, so don't worry about my bike.
So in the current stock that we've got, that's the order it would be. Right now, yes, I'm going through this honeymoon phase with this ZX-9, and it's exceeded all expectations that I ever had, but I'm still not blind to the fact that the newer motorcycles are just better, more horsepower, more tech features. I'm a techie guy, they are just better motorcycles. But for the amount you pay for those motorcycles, for the amount I've paid for that, that motorcycle is the ZX-9 is as much bang for your buck as you can get.
And I'm not trying to put you on the spot by any means. I was just curious as to where your heart and your head, if they were in alignment, or whether you were very much like, yeah, she's great, but the mod cons of the ZH2 are just better. It's just more for me. It was just a genuine question, because everyone's going to be wondering which your favourite bike is now. So I thought I'd just ask.
No, I mean, if you put in the ER6 in there, so all the motorcycles I've ever ridden, the ER6, the CBR 600RR, if you put those into the mix as well, the ER6 for me would be at the bottom, because again, it's a very rudimentary motorcycle. Okay. A bit like the ZX-9R, very rudimentary. Does have ABS and no, it didn't have traction control, but it did have ABS brakes. But it wasn't the most fun motorcycle I'd ever had.
Was it more practical?
No, I wouldn't say more practical or less practical. A motorcycle is inherently not practical.
Was it more practical than fun? Is what I'm saying.
No.
No.
All motorcycles are just fun.
Okay.
They're all fun, but they're different levels of fun, right? So the ER6 was fun, but it wasn't as fun as the CBR 600RR.
Okay.
The CBR 600RR wasn't as fun as ZX-9. To be fair, actually, I'm going to be toing and froing between those two motorcycles, because the CBR 600RR is a hell of a lot of fun, because you're able to rev it all the way out, and you're not actually going that fast. You're going 70-ish mile an hour, 75 mile an hour or so, and you're redlining the bike. So in first gear, you can pretty much have all the fun you want. Whereas on the ZX-9, I can't remember actually what the top speed is in first gear. I don't think I've tested that out yet. But I suspect it's going to be a little bit higher than that in first. But that's the thing. You feel more confident on the CBR 600RR actually giving it all the beans you possibly can, because it's much easier to control, because it's physically slower. It's not as fast as the ZX-9. But despite that, I still think the ZX-9 is a more fun motorcycle to ride, just because having that light frame, that light motorcycle with the amount of power that it does, it really does make all the difference to me in terms of the experience. But that doesn't take anything away from the 600RR or the ER6. All the motorcycles I've ever owned have been fun in their own way.
Yeah.
But yeah, that would be the order that I'd have it in.
Just thought I'd ask.
So I mean, we've kind of gone off track here a little bit, and we've been talking here for about half an hour or so. So I'll probably have to cut some of this out. But I mean, yeah, as I kind of mentioned earlier, just big surprise. The ZX-9R 100%. In almost every single way, it has over-delivered in every aspect that I've put it through. In terms of going through the twisties, it feels like a sport bike in the twisties. It's really lightweight, really agile. You can throw it into the corners. It's absolutely fantastic. Power to weight ratio is insane. And it's exactly what you expect from a sport bike, despite the fact that it is 24 years old. But it can still do other things. It's not a one-trick pony like most sport bikes are. Most sport bikes are just one-dimensional machines. They're good basically for track riding and not even that great for street riding. That's it. These old sport bikes, they slay at everything. Like I kind of mentioned, did I mention earlier that I think it was, I can't remember if it was whilst we were recording this one or whilst we were out and about, that it feels like a street bike first and a track bike second. You know what I mean? Whereas modern sport bikes feel like track bikes on the street.
Yeah.
So a ZX-9 from the 90s, who'd have thought, actually is actually a better experience than a lot of modern sport bikes are for street riding anyway. What a surprise. But anyway, that'll do for our little kind of, kind of reminisce, I suppose, in our ZX-9 experience earlier today. I think we've got pretty much everything that we spoke about earlier whilst we were actually out riding. But that's the thing, when you're actually riding the bike, you think of things to talk about because you're like, oh yeah, this, because you're living the experience, you're doing it, so you can talk about it. So it's a little bit more difficult after the fact, kind of doing it in this kind of style. But I mean, yeah, just is the way it is. Equipment failures, unfortunately, are a regular thing that happens to everybody. So but anyway, hopefully you've liked this little insight into what the ZX-9R feels like from a touring and Pillion perspective. And massive shocker to me, I think is the conclusion to this video.
Nice
just
surprise.
Very, very surprisingly good outside of its usual comfort zone, I suppose is what you'd call it. You know, I mean, it's kind of got me curious now about how good it might be off-roading, because it could be a pretty good off-road bike. I don't know.
Could be.
That sounds mad to say a sport bike actually doing off-road. No chance. I don't think that's going to happen, but still, I mean, it surprised me so far. It might surprise me again in that area as well, so we'll have to wait and see on that front. But anyway, thank you all so much for watching. It's been me and the wifey today talking about the ZX-9R from 1999. And I hope you've enjoyed this one with us. If you did, leave a like, hit subscribe. Let us know what you think down in the comment section below about your experiences with sport bikes and touring with them, taking Pillions on them, things like that. And if you've owned a ZX-9R in the past, let us know what you think as well. So yeah, thanks again. Take care. Ride safe. We'll catch you all in the next video. Have a good one, guys and gals.